Captain Elena Vasquez stretched in her command chair, the synthetic leather creaking beneath her weight. The bridge of the UES horizon hummed with the quiet efficiency it had become the hallmark of Earth's interstellar fleet. Through the reinforced viewports, the endless black was punctuated by stars that no human had seen up close until just 40 years ago. "Status report, Lieutenant Park," she said, accepting a steaming cup of actual coffee, a luxury afforded only to captains and admirals. Lieutenant Park swiped through holographic displays, his eyes reflecting the blue glow. "All systems nominal, Captain. We're maintaining patrol vector along the Accord boundary. Nothing unusual to report." Vasquez nodded, taking a sip of the bitter liquid. Boundary patrol was necessary but monotonous work. Since humanity's acceptance into the galactic neighborhood 17 years ago, they had adhered to the strict limitations imposed by the older species. Humans were confined to specific trade routes and patrol zones, always under observation, always restricted. "They still don't trust us," Vasquez thought, not for the first time. Earth's classification as a death world had preceded them into space. Their biology, evolved to survive a planet with wildly fluctuating climates, dangerous predators, and natural disasters, made other species nervous. Humans could withstand radiation levels that would kill most sentients. They could continue functioning with injuries that would incapacitate others. They healed with remarkable speed and adapted to new environments with unsettling ease. "Captain," Communications Officer Chen's voice cut through her thoughts. "I'm detecting an anomalous signal from within the Alderaan Nebula." Vasquez set down her coffee. "The nebula is restricted space, Officer. Confirm it's not a sensor echo." Chen's fingers danced across her station. "Confirmed, Captain. It's definitely coming from inside the nebula. It's repeating on a cycle approximately 42 seconds long." "Put it through," Vasquez ordered, standing now, feeling the eyes of the bridge crew on her. The sound that filled the bridge was unlike anything they had encountered before, a series of harmonic tones that seemed to modulate in complex patterns, almost musical but with an unmistakable urgency. "Run it through all known translation matrices," Vasquez ordered, "and notify command that we've detected a possible distress signal from within restricted space." 3 hours later, the bridge crew stood in silence as the translation algorithm finally found a match in the archaeological database, a language not heard in the galaxy for nearly 7,000 years. "Playing translated audio," Chen announced, her voice hushed. A synthetic voice emerged from the speakers. "To any who hear this signal, we are the last. The harvesters have returned. Our final colony falls. They consume all. They cannot be stopped by our weapons. If any civilization receives this warning, flee this sector. The harvesters have awakened and hunger once more." The message repeated, each iteration seeming more desperate than the last. "It's old," Science Officer Kagawa said softly. "Based on signal degradation, this has been broadcasting for at least 70 years. Vasquez's jaw tightened, but the nebula has been restricted for only 30 years. The assembly knew. She turned to her communications officer. "Send a Priority 1 message to Admiral Wei. Include the full signal and translation." "Captain," Navigator Rodriguez interjected, "regulations require we report this to the Galactic Assembly first. Accord restrictions are explicit." "I know the regulations, Navigator." Vasquez cut him off, her voice steel-edged but controlled. "And I also know that someone has been calling for help for 70 years while the Assembly did nothing. We report to Earth first." As the message was transmitted to Admiral Wei's headquarters on Luna, Vasquez returned to the viewport, staring into the swirling gases of the distant nebula. Beautiful, deadly, and apparently hiding secrets the other species hadn't wanted humanity to discover. "What are you hiding in there?" she whispered to herself. "And what are these harvesters that frightened even the Assembly?" Admiral Jackson Wee stood motionless before the holographic display in the central chamber of Luna Command. The ancient distress call played once more, its synthetic translation echoing through the room where Earth's highest military and civilian leaders had gathered on short notice. And the Galactic Assembly's response? President Oko asked, her expression grim in the blue light of the holographic displays. Wei cycled to the next image, the formal communication received just 30 minutes earlier. They've denied our request to investigate. Ambassador Cloveron stated that the Alderaan Nebula remains strictly off-limits to human vessels under Section 47 of the Galactic Accord. Did they acknowledge the distress signal? General Santos asked, leaning forward. They classified it as historical data of no current relevance, Wei replied, his voice carefully neutral despite the anger evident in the tightening around his eyes. When pressed, the ambassador suggested that any civilization broadcasting the signal has long since perished. Dr. Emily Chen, Earth's foremost xenobiologist, tapped her stylus against the conference table. The signal degradation analysis suggests it's been broadcasting for 70 years, but the nebula was only declared restricted 30 years ago, precisely when humanity achieved faster-than-light capability. A heavy silence settled over the room as the implications sank in. They knew, Defense Minister Okafor said finally. They detected the signal, investigated, and instead of mounting a rescue, they cordoned off the entire sector. Wei nodded. That's my assessment as well. President Oko paced the length of the conference table. We've spent 17 years proving ourselves to the Assembly, following their regulations, accepting their restrictions, demonstrating that humans can be trusted despite our Deathworlder classification. With respect, Madam President, Wei said, I believe the restrictions were never about trust. They were about capability. He brought up a new display, environmental readings from the nebula's edge collected by Captain Vasquez's ship. The Alderaan Nebula contains radiation levels lethal to most assembly species, gravitational anomalies that would tear their ships apart, microscopic particles that would corrode their hull materials. But not ours, Dr. Chen finished the thought. Human physiology can withstand radiation levels 5 times what would kill a Vexari. Our ships were designed for the extremes of our own solar system. They're not keeping us out, General Santos realized. They're keeping something in, something they couldn't handle themselves. President Oko returned to her seat at the head of the table. The diplomatic ramifications of violating the accord would be severe. We're the newcomers here. We've only just secured trade rights to systems beyond Proxima Centauri. Madam President, Wei said quietly, 50 years before we achieved space travel, humanity nearly destroyed itself in the resource wars. We survived because we finally learned that survival at any cost isn't survival worth having. He brought up an image of Earth as seen from lunar orbit, a blue marble hanging in the void, bearing the faint scars of humanity's past mistakes. We may be newcomers to the stars, he continued, but we remember what it means to face extinction alone. If there's even a chance that someone in that nebula is still alive, still fighting, can we truly call ourselves human if we abandon them because helping is inconvenient or risky? The room fell silent again, but this silence held a different quality, the weight of a decision already made in each person's heart. President Oko straightened her shoulders. How quickly can you assemble a rescue fleet? Admiral, 50 ships can be ready within 24 hours. Volunteers only. You'll have no shortage of those, General Santos said with grim certainty. Then it's decided, the President said. Prepare your fleet, Admiral. We'll deal with the diplomatic fallout afterward. As the meeting adjourned, Wei remained behind, studying the sensor readings from the nebula. Whatever waited within those swirling clouds of gas and radiation, humanity would face it, not because they were fearless, but because they remembered fear all too well. The UES horizon shuddered as it pushed deeper into the Alderaan Nebula, the viewports now displaying swirling clouds of purple and green gases, illuminated by distant, distorted starlight. Captain Vasquez gripped her command chair as another gravitational wave hit the ship. Shield integrity at 78%, Lieutenant Park reported, his voice steady despite the beads of sweat forming at his temples. Hull temperature rising but still within tolerance. Across the bridge, damage control teams worked with practiced efficiency. This was the fourth major gravitational disturbance in the past 6 hours, each one stronger than the last. Engineering reports the port stabilizers are showing stress fractures. Communications Officer Chen announced. Chief Engineer Okonkwo requests permission to take them offline for emergency repairs. Granted, Vasquez replied, bringing up the fleet formation on her display. The Horizon was one of 47 ships still operational. 3 days into their journey, they'd already lost the UES Dauntless to a radiation surge that overwhelmed its shields, and the UES Pacifica and Sentinel to a gravitational shear that tore through their hulls. Over the secure channel, Admiral Wei's voice crackled through. All vessels, this is Admiral Wei. The nebula's density is increasing. We're receiving updated sensor data from the scout ships. Stand by for navigation adjustment. New coordinates flowed into the navigation systems. Rodriguez studied them with widening eyes. Captain, these coordinates will take us directly through that radiation cloud, he said, pointing to a dense mass of crimson on the tactical display. Vasquez nodded. Lieutenant Park, reconfigure shields to radiation protocol Delta 7. Delta 7 will divert power from propulsion and weapons, Park warned. We won't need weapons against radiation, Lieutenant, Vasquez replied with a grim smile. And we can coast through if necessary. As the fleet adjusted course, Dr. Kagawa approached the captain's chair, tablet in hand. Captain, I've been analyzing the nebula's composition. It's not natural. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Explain. The radiation patterns, gravitational anomalies, even the corrosive particulates, they're too organized, too purposeful. He showed her the data patterns. It's as if someone designed this nebula as a barrier. Before Vasquez could respond, a massive jolt rocked the ship, sending several crew members sprawling to the deck. Emergency klaxons blared. Status report, Vasquez demanded, pulling herself back into her chair. Major gravitational wave, Captain. Twice the intensity of anything we've encountered, Park shouted over the alarms. Shield integrity at 42% and falling. Through the viewport, Vasquez watched in horror as one of the smaller vessels in the fleet, the UES Sagan, was caught in the full force of the wave. The research vessel's hull compressed visibly before structural integrity failed, the ship breaking apart in a silent explosion of atmosphere and debris. All hands lost, Chen whispered, removing her earpiece as the Sagan's distress beacon went silent. Vasquez hit the fleet-wide comm. This is Captain Vasquez of the Horizon. We've lost the Sagan. All vessels, adjust your shield harmonics to match the following frequency. She nodded to Park, who transmitted the data they'd collected from the wave pattern. As the surviving ships implemented the adjustments, Vasquez turned to Kagawa. If someone designed this nebula as a barrier, Doctor, they intended to keep people out, or keep something in. Or both, Kagawa replied softly. Vasquez returned her gaze to the view screen, where the nebula's gases now seemed to part before them, revealing a path forward through the chaos. Helm, maintain course. Whatever's broadcasting that signal has waited long enough for an answer. As the Horizon pressed forward, the crew settled into a rhythm of crisis and response, adaptation and adjustment, displaying the very qualities that had allowed their species to survive and thrive on a world that had never made survival easy. What the assembly species saw as recklessness, humans recognized as necessary resilience. They would reach the signal. They would answer the call. It was what humans did. The massive generation ship loomed before them, a city in space stretching nearly 12 kilometers from bow to stern. Its once gleaming hull was pitted and scarred by centuries of micrometeorite impacts and nebula exposure. The distress signal emanated from deep within its core, still broadcasting the same haunting message that had drawn humanity across restricted space. No signs of active propulsion, Rodriguez reported from his station. power readings minimal, concentrated in the central sectors. Admiral Y's flagship, the UES Everest, took position alongside the horizon as the rest of the fleet established a defensive perimeter around the ancient vessel. Life signs? Vasquez asked, leaning forward in her chair. Dr. Kagawa studied his readings with intense concentration, difficult to determine through their hull material. But yes, thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of life forms. Biosignatures unlike anything in our database. We're being scanned, Lieutenant Park announced suddenly. Non-invasive electromagnetic sweep. A tense moment passed before Chen's console lit up. Captain, we're receiving a transmission. Audio and visual. On screen. Vasquez ordered, straightening her uniform as the main view screen flickered. The being that appeared was humanoid but clearly alien. Tall and slender with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with each movement. 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, blinked independently as they studied the human bridge crew. You are not assembly, the being said in a melodic voice, the translation matrix struggling to keep up with the complex tonal language. Yet you have assembly technology. Explain your presence. Vasquez stepped forward. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Fleet. We detected your distress signal and have come to render assistance. All 4 eyes blinked simultaneously. Impossible. The nebula is impassable to organic life. The assembly determined this when they received our signal 72 cycles ago. Murmurs spread across the bridge. Confirmation of what they had suspected. The assembly had received the message and done nothing. Humans evolved on a high-radiation planet. Vasquez explained. We can withstand conditions that would harm other species. May I ask whom I'm addressing? I am Elder Neri of the Thalasian Exodus, the last 300,000 survivors of our civilization. The being's outer eyes narrowed. You came despite the dangers. Why? Admiral Wei's voice answered from the doorway as he entered the Horizon's bridge, having transferred over from his flagship. Because that's what humans do, Elder Neri. We answer calls for help. The Elder studied Wei for a long moment. The assembly said rescue was impossible, that the nebula was a natural barrier no ship could survive. The assembly was wrong, Wei replied simply, about what was possible and about the nebula being natural. Elder Neri's skin shifted to a deep blue. Yes, the nebula is artificial, created by the harvesters when they consumed our homeworld. It is composed of the atomized remains of our planets, our moons, our people. We fled into it knowing they would not follow immediately. The radiation signature disrupts their tracking systems. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. You've been hiding here for 70 years. Vasquez asked softly. 72 of your years, 3 generations of our people, born aboard this vessel, never knowing solid ground. Elder Neri's voice carried profound weariness. But the harvesters have adapted. Our sensors detect their approach. Within 15 days, they will reach this position. Admiral Wei exchanged glances with Vasquez before addressing the alien elder. The assembly abandoned you to your fate. We won't make the same mistake. What exactly are these harvesters? Elder Neri's skin paled to an almost translucent white. They are the end of all things. Living crystal structures that consume organic matter and technology alike, converting everything into energy to feed their collective consciousness. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They simply harvest. The Elder's 4 eyes focused intently on the humans. Your journey here was brave but futile. There is nowhere in this galaxy the harvesters cannot eventually reach. You should leave while you can. That's not how we operate, Admiral Wei said, his voice firm but kind. Our ships may not be able to outrun these harvesters, but we're remarkably good at fighting against impossible odds. It's something of a human specialty. The makeshift war room aboard the Horizon buzzed with activity as human officers and Thalasian elders crowded around holographic displays. Lieutenant Zhou Chen, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, manipulated the three-dimensional rendering of a harvester entity based on Phylasian records. Their outer structure is crystalline silicon, she explained, zooming in on the lattice pattern. Conventional weapons, kinetic energy, even our most advanced plasma torpedoes, would only fragment them into smaller units that can eventually reconstitute. Elder Nari nodded solemnly, the elder's skin shifting to a subdued amber. This is why our civilization fell. We shattered their forms with our most powerful weapons, only to watch the fragments grow into new harvesters. Each piece retains the collective consciousness. Admiral Wei studied the simulation with narrowed eyes. What about their ships? The vessels that carry them between star systems. Extensions of themselves. Another Phylasian, Science Director Lurin, replied. Living crystal grown and shaped for space travel. They do not pilot their vessels, they become them. Dr. Kagawa shook his head. If they're silicon-based crystal structures, they must have some vulnerability. Every material has a breaking point. Lieutenant Chen had been only half listening, her attention drawn to a small group of Phylasian children in an adjacent chamber. Through the transparent partition, she watched as they played with small crystalline objects that pulsed with soft light, responding to the musical tones the children produced. What are those? She asked suddenly, pointing to the toys. Elder Nari glanced over. Memory crystals. Teaching tools for our young. They resonate with specific tonal patterns to help children learn our history. Chen's eyes widened. Resonate, she whispered, then more loudly, resonate. That's it. All eyes turned to her as she rushed to the central display, pushing aside the hologram of the harvester to pull up data on crystalline structures from the ship's database. All crystalline structures have resonant frequencies, she explained, her words tumbling out rapidly as the pieces connected in her mind. Specific vibrations that match the natural frequency of the crystal's lattice structure. Dr. Kagawa caught on immediately, like an opera singer shattering a glass with just her voice. Exactly. Chen expanded the simulation. If we can identify the exact resonant frequency of the harvester's crystalline structure, we could shatter them at the molecular level. Wei finished, understanding dawning on his face, not just breaking them into fragments, but disrupting the very structure that allows those fragments to retain consciousness. Elder Neri's skin cycled through several colors rapidly, the Phylasian equivalent of intense emotion. Our scientists considered sonic weaponry in the early stages of the war, but our technology couldn't generate the necessary precision or power. Humans have been refining acoustic technologies since before we achieved spaceflight, Admiral Wei said, a spark of hope igniting in his eyes. Our ships use advanced harmonic stabilizers to withstand the stresses of faster-than-light travel. Lieutenant Chen was already working at a terminal, fingers flying across the interface. We could repurpose the stabilizer arrays to emit precisely calibrated sonic pulses, if we can tune them to the harvester's exact resonant frequency. We'd need a sample, Kagawa interjected, something to test frequencies against. Elder Nari hesitated, then tapped a complex pattern on a wristband. A moment later, a Phylasian guard entered, carrying a sealed container. This contains a dormant harvester fragment, recovered during our final stand on Fellas Prime. It has been kept in stasis for 70 years. Admiral Wei raised an eyebrow. You've been carrying one of these things with you all this time. To study. To understand. Elder Neri's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. To find a weakness we never discovered. The fragment gleamed in its transparent prison, a jagged shard of milky crystal that seemed to pulse with an inner light despite its dormancy. Lieutenant Chen approached the container carefully. With this, we can test frequencies until we find the one that causes structural degradation. How long? Wei asked, his tone making it clear that time was their scarcest resource. Chen calculated quickly. To reconfigure the stabilizer arrays, test frequencies, and deploy the modifications to the entire fleet. 10 days, minimum. The harvesters will reach us in 15, Elder Neri reminded them. Admiral Wei nodded grimly. Then you have 9 days, Lieutenant. We'll need the extra time to plan tactical deployment. As the group dispersed to begin work, Wei caught Vasquez's eye. It's going to be close. It usually is when humans are involved, she replied with a grim smile. We seem to specialize in last-minute solutions. Let's hope this one works, Wei said, glancing at the dormant harvester fragment. Or it might be humanity's last solution. Harvester vessels detected. Lieutenant Park's voice cut through the tense silence of the Horizons Bridge. Multiple signatures approaching from bearing 047 Mark 23. Captain Vasquez leaned forward in her command chair, adrenaline sharpening her senses. Time to intercept. 12 minutes, Captain. They're moving faster than the Thalasian projection suggested. On the main view screen, the tactical display showed 5 crystalline structures approaching, each one resembling a jagged, asymmetrical shard that seemed to bend light around its edges. They moved with unnerving precision, adjusting their formation to counter the human fleet's defensive posture. They're adapting to our deployment, Admiral Wei observed from his position at the tactical station. Lieutenant Chen, status of the sonic disruptors. Chen's face was drawn with fatigue after days of non-stop work, online and calibrated to the resonant frequency we identified. Admiral, effective range is limited, no more than 5 kilometers. We'll need to get close. Very close, Vasquez muttered, studying the approaching vessels. Each harvester ship was at least twice the size of the largest human cruiser. Wei opened the fleet-wide channel. All vessels, this is Admiral Wei. Execute pattern Chimera on my mark. Remember your approach vectors. The disruptors must hit simultaneously or the harvesters will adapt. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The human fleet split into 3 squadrons with practiced precision. Alpha Squadron, led by the Everest, moved to engage the lead harvester vessel. Beta Squadron, under Vasquez's command, swung wide to approach from below the plane of engagement. Gamma Squadron accelerated to full speed, aiming to draw the attention of the remaining harvester ships. The plan lasted exactly 47 seconds. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the lead harvester vessel, catching the Everest and 2 escorting destroyers in its path. The Everest's shields flared bright blue before collapsing entirely. The destroyers, UES Vigilant and UES Hammond, simply ceased to exist, atomized in an instant. Everest reporting critical damage, Chen announced, her voice tight. Their disruptor array is offline. Before Vasquez could issue new orders, 2 more human vessels vanished from the tactical display, caught by energy beams from the flanking harvester ships. They're targeting our larger vessels, Park realized. They've identified our command ships. Change of plans, Vasquez announced, hitting the squadron command channel. Beta Squadron, scatter formation. Approach in waves of 2. Fire disruptors as soon as you're in range, then break off immediately. The bridge rocked violently as a glancing blow caught the Horizon's port shield. Warning klaxons blared as damage reports flooded in. Port shield down to 30%, Park reported. Hull breach on deck 4. Emergency bulkheads engage. Distance to target, Vasquez demanded, gripping her chair as the inertial dampeners struggled to compensate for the evasive maneuvers. 3 kilometers and closing, Rodriguez answered, his hands dancing across the navigation controls. We're the closest ship to Harvester 3. Prepare the disruptor, Vasquez ordered. Full power to forward shields. Divert life support if necessary. Chen looked up sharply. Captain, diverting life support. Will give us 6 minutes of breathable air, Vasquez finished. We only need 2. Do it. As the oxygen levels began to thin, the Horizon closed the final distance to the massive crystalline vessel. Through the viewports, the harvester loomed impossibly large, a mountain of living crystal that seemed to pulse with malevolent intelligence. Disruptor at full charge, Chen reported, her breathing already labored in the thinning atmosphere. Target locked. Fire, Vasquez ordered. The sonic pulse was invisible, but its effect was not. Ripples of distortion spread across the crystalline surface of the harvester vessel. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with beautiful and terrible symmetry, cracks appeared along the precise lines of the crystal's lattice structure. The cracks deepened, spreading like lightning through the massive form before the entire vessel shattered into billions of fragments that scattered into the void, glittering like diamond dust. "Direct hit," Chen exclaimed. "Complete structural failure of target." A ragged cheer went up from the bridge crew, cut short as the fragments began to glow with an eerie inner light. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, his voice strained both from lack of oxygen and rising alarm. "The fragments are still active. They're moving, converging on our position." Vasquez hit the comm. "All ships, the fragments remain conscious. Repeat, destruction is not complete. Fall back and regroup." As the horizon struggled to pull away, the glittering cloud of crystalline fragments swarmed toward them, each tiny shard pulsing with the same collective intelligence they had just attempted to destroy. Admiral Wei stared at the tactical display aboard the damaged Everest, his face illuminated by the red emergency lighting. The main harvester fleet had arrived, hundreds of crystalline vessels of varying sizes, their formations spreading across the nebula like a glittering web. "Status of the fleet," he demanded, pressing a hand against his side where a piece of shrapnel had caught him during the initial attack. 32 vessels still operational, Admiral," his tactical officer reported. 7 critically damaged but maintaining position. Engine capacity reduced across all ships after the last engagement. Chief Engineer Maria Rodriguez, transferred from the Thalasian generation ship after discovering its engine modifications, approached with a data tablet. Her uniform was stained with coolant fluid and scorch marks. "Admiral, I've analyzed the data from our sonic attacks," she said, her voice hoarse from the smoke that still lingered in the air. "The frequency is effective, but the fragments retain consciousness because the resonance isn't sustained long enough to disrupt their molecular memory." Wade nodded grimly. "And we can't maintain the resonance because our ships can't stay in range without being torn apart." "There might be another way," Rodriguez said, tapping her tablet to display schematics of the Thalasian generation ship. "Their ancient engines use crystalline resonators to control the massive energy output. With modifications, we could convert the entire engine system into a resonance pulse emitter." "How powerful?" "Powerful enough to blanket the entire area with the exact frequency needed to completely disrupt the harvester consciousness, not just shatter their forms, but erase their ability to reconstitute." Wei caught the hesitation in her voice. "What's the catch, Chief?" Rodriguez met his gaze steadily. "The pulse would burn out the ship's entire power system. The Thalasians would be stranded here, with minimal life support." The Admiral was silent for a moment, weighing the implications. "Have you spoken to Elder Nari about this?" "I have," she nodded. "The Elder wanted me to present the option to you first." Wei hit the comm. "Get me Elder Nari on a secure channel." Moments later, the Thalasian leader's face appeared on screen, skin cycling through muted shades of blue and gray. "Engineer Rodriguez has briefed me on your proposal," Wei said without preamble. "I won't ask your people to sacrifice their only home and means of escape. You misunderstand humans even after all this time, Admiral." Elder Neri replied, 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "We have already begun the modifications. Our ship has carried the burden of our survival for generations. Now it will serve a greater purpose. The harvesters will be upon us within hours," Wei warned. "Once we commit to this plan, there's no turning back." "There has been no turning back since they consumed our homeworld," the Elder said with quiet dignity. "We will not run forever while others die. This ends today." Wei nodded, respect evident in his expression. "We'll evacuate as many of your people as our ships can safely carry." "No." Elder Neri's skin flushed a deep purple. "My engineers must remain to trigger the pulse at precisely the right moment. And our people will not be separated. We have survived together. We will face whatever comes together." As the communication ended, Wei turned to his crew. Contact all fleet vessels. Begin consolidating crews from the most damaged ships to those still combat-capable. We need every functional vessel to engage the Harvester fleet. Draw them in close to the Phalasian ship. Sir, his executive officer said quietly, that's a suicide mission for whoever leads the engagement. Wei's expression was resolute as he stood, ignoring the pain from his injury. That's why I'll be leading it personally. The Everest will take point position. Admiral. This isn't a debate, Commander. Wei cut him off. Humanity answered this call, knowing the risks. I won't order anyone to make a sacrifice I'm not willing to make myself. As orders spread throughout the fleet, human crews prepared for what many believed would be their final battle. There was no hesitation, no protest, just the grim determination of a species that had evolved on a world where survival often came down to selfless action in the face of overwhelming odds. They had come to save others. If necessary, they would die doing exactly that. The UES Horizon limped through Earth's orbital defense perimeter, its hull scared almost beyond recognition. Behind it followed 18 other vessels in similar condition, all that remained of the 50 ships that had ventured into the Alderaan Nebula 3 weeks earlier. Nestled protectively among them was a fleet of hastily constructed evacuation craft carrying nearly 300,000 Phalasian refugees. Captain Vasquez stood on her bridge, uniform torn and stained, one arm in a makeshift sling. Around her, her crew operated with the quiet efficiency of those who had faced death together and survived against all odds. Captain, Lieutenant Chen said, looking up from her console, we're being hailed by Luna Command. And there are 27 non-human vessels in Earth orbit. Assembly species. Vasquez straightened her shoulders. On screen. The view screen flickered to life, revealing not the expected human admiral, but an array of alien faces, representatives from every major assembly species. At their center stood a familiar figure, Ambassador Culverin, the very diplomat who had denied their request to investigate the distress signal. Captain Vasquez, the ambassador began, mandibles clicking in what the crew now recognized as nervousness. On behalf of the Galactic Assembly, I extend formal greetings to the United Earth Fleet, and, a pause, to the survivors of Thalas. Ambassador, Vasquez acknowledged coldly. I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. Perhaps you've come to arrest us for violating the Accord restrictions. No, Captain, the ambassador's voice carried an unfamiliar tone, something close to humility. We have come to acknowledge a grave error in judgment. Your fleet's communications were monitored. Your battle against the Harvesters was observed. Vasquez exchanged glances with her officers. You were watching, and did nothing to assist. We were unprepared, the ambassador admitted. No assembly species has ever successfully engaged the Harvesters and survived. What your fleet accomplished was believed impossible. Admiral Wei and his crew on the Everest made it possible, Vasquez replied, grief edging her voice, along with the Phalasian elders who sacrificed their generation ship to create the resonance pulse. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. A new voice interjected as Earth's President Oko joined the transmission. Captain, Luna Command is coordinating with the Phalasian leadership to establish temporary settlements. Your refugees will be welcome here while we negotiate more permanent arrangements. The Exalaxian representative, a being of living metal rarely seen at diplomatic functions, leaned forward. The Exalaxian collective offers its engineering expertise to help the Phalasians establish a new colony world. We have compatible systems that may be integrated with their remaining technology. One by one, other representatives made similar offers. The Vexeri offering medical assistance, the Polarians providing terraforming technology, the Canturi pledging agricultural support. What changed? Vasquez asked bluntly. 3 weeks ago, the Assembly was content to let an entire civilization die. Ambassador Culverin's compound eyes lowered briefly. Your battle was broadcast across all Assembly channels by an observer vessel. Tens of billions witnessed humans, a species we had classified as dangerous and unpredictable. willingly sacrificed themselves for a people they had never met before. It made us question many things, the Vexari representative added softly. 6 months later, Captain Vasquez stood with Elder Nari beneath the newly completed memorial in Earth orbit, a massive crystalline structure containing the names of every human and Thalassian lost during what had become known as the Harvester Incursion. The crystal, designed by Thalassian artisans using human acoustic technology, sang with different harmonies each Earth day, the sounds carrying the cultural heritage of both species. Your Admiral Wei would be proud, Elder Neri said, the Elder's skin a peaceful blue. The emergency response protocol has already deployed 3 mixed-species crews to investigate distress signals. Vasquez nodded, watching as a training vessel passed nearby, its crew comprising both humans and various assembly species, all learning from human tactical instructors. He always said there was a place for Deathworlders in the galaxy, she replied. We just needed to find it. Beneath the slowly rotating monument, the simple inscription glowed with soft light. They answered the call.